They arrived cloaked in golden arrogance, their voices calm and rehearsed. The Galactic Council, a coalition of ancient species that had outlived empires and rewritten history, had decided Earth was ready, or rather, ready to kneel. Their emissary didn't ask, he declared. Earth would be inducted into the greater galactic community under Council supervision. Tribute would be mandatory. Our weapon systems would be dismantled. Our technological advancement monitored. Our governments restructured. Our sovereignty redefined. They called it integration. But everyone on Earth understood the subtext, subjugation, just in prettier clothes. The Council had done this before, to countless civilizations, all now shadows of what they once were. Cultures stripped. Languages diluted. Militaries dissolved. The Council feared unpredictability, and humanity had that in abundance. They cloaked their orders in terms like peace, harmony, and stability. But their smiles were edged in condescension. They viewed us like an unpredictable animal brought to heel, fascinating, dangerous, ultimately controllable. Humanity, still scarred from its own brutal history, didn't leap into war. Our leaders chose diplomacy, hoping reason would work. We invited them to our forums, showed them our science, our art, our unity in chaos. They nodded unimpressed. To them, our evolution was a joke. Our wars were savagery. Our independence a nuisance. They mocked the idea that a species with such a violent past could ever be trusted with influence in galactic affairs. They placed Earth under Tier 7 compliance restrictions, the lowest category possible, normally reserved for pre-FTL civilizations. It was a public humiliation. We had faster-than-light drives, orbital infrastructure, AI systems nearing singularity, and yet we were ranked barely above animals. Our diplomats protested. The Council replied with silence. When pushed harder, they finally spoke. You are not trusted. You are still children with knives. Council surveillance ships were stationed in our orbit within days. They claimed it was observation, but their scanning sweeps violated sovereign airspace regularly. Resource audits began without permission. Trade blockades were set up, cutting Earth off from potential allies. Meanwhile, they flooded our networks with propaganda. Unity through obedience. The galaxy cheered Earth's entry while our freedoms were slowly eroded. And yet, they never declared war. They didn't have to. The Council didn't need to conquer us. They suffocated us with rules and bureaucratic nooses. Our thinkers were invited to share their breakthroughs, only for those ideas to be taken and patented by Council conglomerates. Our space programs were shackled by alien regulations. Our military satellites were demanded for review and reclassification. Resistance, they said, would be treated as hostility. A few voices among us welcomed the change. Peace is worth compromise, they said. Better to be part of something greater than stand alone. But most understood the reality. This was no alliance. It was domination. Veiled, slow, quiet. The kind that erodes resolve before it ever touches a trigger. The Council assumed their plan was working. Earth was isolated, pressured, humiliated. They mistook our patience for submission. They misread our silence as weakness. They thought we were breaking. But we weren't. We were watching. Because unlike the species they'd bullied before, humans remembered. We remembered every war, every empire that tried to chain us, every tyrant who thought power was forever. We remembered revolutions forged in fire, resistance bred in alleys and deserts and prisons. And more than anything, we remembered how to wait. The Council had come expecting either chaos or compliance. They found neither. Earth didn't erupt. It didn't fold. It simply went quiet. To them, we were primitives, still fighting over flags and borders. But they didn't see what lay beneath the noise, the coordinated machinery of survival, the hunger to adapt, the refusal to kneel. They thought they were teaching us to behave. What they didn't realize was, we were studying them. Every insult, every restriction, every arrogant smirk from their delegates was being recorded. Not for court. For memory. For planning. They believed they had time. That we would either be tamed or rendered irrelevant. They forgot one truth. Predators don't roar before the hunt. They stalk. They wait. And when they strike, no one hears the warning. The Council's grip tightened. Enforcement fleets began docking in high orbit as if they owned the space around Earth. Scans intensified, frequencies were jammed, and Council drones hovered in our skies under the banner of peacekeeping. They arrived in polished ships, cloaked in superiority, speaking of oversight and compliance while systematically dissecting our autonomy. They controlled access to resources, placing embargoes on off-world trade routes. Earth's spaceports, once hubs of innovation, were now bottlenecked by regulation. Ships needed inspection clearance. Delays became indefinite. Supplies were halted without explanation. We were being boxed in. Council auditors invaded scientific institutions under the guise of technological vetting. They seized prototypes, classified human engineering breakthroughs as threat-level advancements, and restricted their further development. Our best minds found themselves answering to alien bureaucrats who barely understood the math they were reviewing. Projects in AI, quantum mechanics, and propulsion were either dismantled or locked behind Council supervision. Brilliant research disappeared into their archives, uncredited, unrecoverable. Resistance within Earth's political structure began to crack. Some leaders saw cooperation as survival. They advocated full compliance, eager to be recognized as model citizens. Others, quieter but resolute, began building a different path. In hidden chambers and encrypted networks, planning took root. Not rebellion, not yet. Understanding came first. We needed to know what we were truly dealing with. Analysts studied the Council's hierarchy. It wasn't monolithic, it was fragmented beneath the surface. Dozens of species, each with their own agendas, grudges, and fears. Most had long given up their edge in exchange for safety under the Council's umbrella. Technologically superior but mentally stagnant, they moved through procedure like machines, predictable, rigid, dependent on consensus. Their military doctrine relied on overwhelming numbers and suppression through control, not adaptive strategy. No innovation. Just mass enforcement. We fed them the image they wanted. Disorganized. Submissive. Distracted. Meanwhile, our most capable minds, engineers, generals, linguists, behavioral psychologists, were reassigned to new positions under vague civilian titles. On the surface, Earth appeared pacified. Below it, a parallel structure began to form, one not recognized by any Council record. Our data scientists intercepted Council transmissions, decrypted layers of diplomatic chatter, and uncovered what they truly thought of us. Psychologically unstable, socially volatile, genetically aggressive. They saw us as defective. Dangerous not because of power, but because of unpredictability. That was their weakness. They needed predictability. It was the only way their system functioned. Every compliant species in their alliance had been groomed for order. None had prepared them for chaos with purpose. We gave them exactly what they expected: emotional outbursts on the global stage, disinformation, political squabbling. Beneath the noise, operations moved forward with quiet precision. Intelligence cells tracked the behavior of alien patrols. Defense experts dissected the mechanical design of every drone that landed. Counter-programming began, camouflaged inside public infrastructure updates. Council surveillance was turned into a blindfold. They never saw it. They didn't see the patterns. The sudden unification of corporate networks. The redundancy built into energy grids. The sharp decline in digital activity around defense sectors. They thought it was regression, proof that we were crumbling. They mistook silence for dysfunction. One by one, we discovered their soft points. Not in their armor or fleets, but in their assumptions. They believed fear would hold us in place. They believed our capacity for destruction made us too unstable to be taken seriously. But they never understood what restraint looked like. We'd had the ability to lash out, but we didn't. Not yet. Because we didn't want noise, we wanted precision. They ignored history. Human nature isn't defined by chaos alone. It's defined by what comes after. When threats arrive, we adapt. When enemies mock, we remember. When pressure mounts, we calculate. Our ancestors didn't dominate the earth because they were the strongest. They did it because they learned faster, hunted smarter, waited longer. Evolution favored the mind that could outthink the claw. To the Council, we were a species of rage. But rage was never our final form. They missed what mattered. The stillness wasn't surrender. The silence wasn't confusion. It was alignment. And when apex predators align, they don't declare it. They act. It began with a lie. The Council accused one of our off-world colonies of manufacturing prohibited weaponry. No evidence. No warning. No trial. Just a fleet descending like executioners. In less than 4 hours, the colony was gone. 200,000 civilians, scientists, engineers, children, erased under the banner of preemptive security. The Council called it unfortunate but necessary. No apology. No accountability. Only carefully worded statements that shifted blame to non-compliant human elements. The broadcast of their justification aired on every galactic network. Calm, detached, dismissive. They even praised their fleet commander for minimizing secondary damage. To them, it was a footnote in administrative records. To us, it was a massacre. The impact on Earth was immediate. Grief, rage, disbelief, all in one breath. Protests ignited. Millions gathered in silence, mourning those lost. Flags across nations were lowered, not by order, but by instinct. It didn't matter what borders divided us, those were our people, and they were annihilated without consequence. Still, humanity held its line. Our diplomats requested answers through official council channels. They sent a representative to the tribunal, armed with evidence of the colony's peaceful nature, data logs, habitat records, even personal messages from the inhabitants. He stood before a council of aliens older than our written history, pleading not for war, but for justice. They laughed. The sound was broadcast live, unfiltered. Cold, mocking, indifferent. To them, it was a display of power, an open reminder of who controlled the rules. The moment that laugh echoed across Earth, something fundamental shifted. Grief didn't disappear. It hardened. The illusion that dialogue could save us shattered. Unity came not through orders, but understanding. Across continents, underground channels came alive. Silent agreements formed between intelligence agencies, militaries, scientific institutions. No summits. No speeches. Just quiet, coordinated preparation. Everyone knew what had to happen next. It wasn't vengeance. It was necessity. The Earth went quiet. Council communications to our planetary networks began failing. Their orbiting scanners stopped receiving full telemetry. Our AI networks showed unexpected maintenance outages. To them, it looked like internal collapse. But beneath the surface, Earth was transforming. The tribunal laughed because they thought we had no claws. They believed we were shouting at giants. What they didn't see, what they never tried to see, was what we'd been building behind the silence. Our capacity for retaliation was never measured in numbers. It was measured in memory. We didn't forget the colony. We remembered every child's name. Every experiment left unfinished. Every voice silenced. And we carried them in encrypted servers, military payloads, and neural archives. They would not be avenged through emotion. They would be answered through precision. The Council expected Earth to lash out recklessly, to prove its own barbarism. Instead, we vanished from their systems. No official statements. No retaliation. Just a planet that dimmed in their databases, as if falling into technological decay. They didn't realize they were losing visibility, not power. They had always mistaken chaos for incompetence. But now they faced something they couldn't quantify: calm defiance. Council patrols near Earth's territory began encountering strange malfunctions. Navigation glitches. AI systems looping. Entire vessels rerouting without crew input. Council engineers blamed cosmic interference. But we knew. We had rewritten the space. Satellites they thought disabled were actually decoys. The real ones watched, recorded, triangulated. Every movement of their fleet, every flaw in their formation, every pattern in their response protocols, we documented all of it. While they mocked us, we mapped them. Not as they appeared in reports, but as they truly were, fragmented, arrogant, overconfident. The mistake wasn't the attack. The mistake was the message they sent after. Earth must learn its place. That sentence wasn't just heard. It was burned into human memory. It became a marker, proof that survival required dominance. That peace under their rule was an illusion. We didn't rage. We adapted. We didn't threaten. We calculated. We didn't retaliate blindly. We prepared for something permanent. The colony's destruction was meant to break us. Instead, it clarified everything. The Council wasn't a protector. It was a cage. And we were done pretending to fit inside it. The Council assumed we'd retreat inward. That Earth's silence was the sound of defeat. What they failed to grasp was that we had moved beyond anger. We had entered alignment. Quiet cooperation emerged between former rivals. Industrial outputs shifted overnight. Civilian factories retooled. Orbital stations began transmitting false telemetry. Everything public became misdirection. Everything real went dark. Humanity's preparation wasn't frantic, it was surgical. Decentralized command structures emerged with flawless efficiency. Redundant networks ensured 0 points of failure. No single leader gave the order. No broadcast announced it. But everyone understood. We weren't preparing for war. We were engineering inevitability. Our first move was knowledge. Council vessels orbiting Earth had sophisticated tech, but they broadcast more than they realized. Our data mines extracted communications, ship diagnostics, behavioral patterns. Every signal pulse, every power cycle, was logged and analyzed. Within weeks, we understood their fleet operations better than they did. Council AI systems were powerful, but rigid. Their logic trees, once innovative, had grown complacent from centuries without real threats. Our cyber teams didn't just infiltrate them, they rewrote the rules. Sleeper code embedded in their updates, triggered by behaviors they didn't know we monitored. Failsafes turned into Trojans. Diagnostic subroutines became gateways. Where brute force had failed others, we inserted precision. Council drones began reporting false positives. Survey readings showed phantom activity. Fleet responses were redirected without trace. Their command centers believed they were facing scattered anomalies. The truth, they were seeing the edges of a net pulling tight. Human military are backslash and deaccelerated in secret. Projects previously limited by treaty or funding were unshackled. Weapon platforms that had existed only in theory were rapidly prototyped. Not for volume. For effect. Earth didn't need millions of ships. It needed systems that exploited every blind spot the Council didn't know it had. Stealth fields built on quantum interference. Kinetic interceptors that used gravity wells instead of propulsion. Viral code that spread through energy signatures, not data lines. Council trade routes were quietly mapped. Every supply chain, every fuel depot, every vulnerable relay point catalogued with time-stamped accuracy. We didn't deploy fleets, we isolated lifelines. Without lifting a weapon, we showed the first signs of dominance, control without presence. Inside their infrastructure, our influence grew unnoticed. Council sensors were recalibrated through subtle firmware changes. Their reconnaissance data began to fail them. Patrols were routed away from key locations based on falsified risk assessments. By the time they noticed the inconsistencies, they had already lost the ability to distinguish illusion from reality. Our operatives moved through neutral systems under civilian cover. Engineers became consultants. Linguists became cultural advisors. Every human interaction seeded understanding of Council psychology. We learned not just what they said, but what they refused to say. Fear, to them, was failure. That was the key. They had no framework for handling adversaries that thrived under pressure. They still believed Earth was fractured. The image of a divided species was their comfort. What they didn't realize was that division had always been our advantage. From chaos, we drew innovation. From disagreement, resilience. Where they demanded uniformity, we found strength in variance. By the third month of silence, Earth's transformation was complete. Communications from the surface were filtered through quantum encryptors. Civilian broadcasts remained cheerful, unthreatening, banal. Below the surface, the war engine turned. Not noisy. Not visible. But unstoppable. Signals began to emerge across Council systems, fragments of distorted transmissions, encrypted in a structure they couldn't decode. They tried to isolate the source. There wasn't one. The signals weren't coming from any single place. They came from everywhere. A pattern began to form. Not a message. A rhythm. One only humans would recognize. Predators don't signal with words. They signal with presence. Council command centers increased alert levels. Fleets repositioned. But they still didn't act. They hesitated, not out of mercy, but uncertainty. For the first time in centuries, the Council faced a species it couldn't predict. Their algorithms showed no clear outcome. Their historians had no precedent. Every time they ran projections, one anomaly remained. Humanity was supposed to be chaotic. Instead, it had gone methodical. Silent. Focused. The balance had shifted. We hadn't fired a shot. We hadn't sent a threat. But they had already begun to feel something alien to their system. Doubt. It began with silence. Not disruption. Not violence. Silence, precise, suffocating, calculated. At 0400 Galactic Standard, 27 Council outposts lost contact with their networks. No explosions. No alarms. Just disconnection. Emergency protocols activated. Backup links rerouted. The systems responded exactly as designed, and still failed. By 0415, 3 border patrol fleets rerouted without command. Their navigation systems received verified orders from non-existent sources. Status screens displayed green. Crews followed protocol, unaware they were being moved like pieces across a board already solved. Surveillance logs from those sectors vanished. Not corrupted, replaced with perfect fabrications. At 0500, the Council's central archives on the Lara Prime detected unauthorized access across 17 secured data vaults. When engineers initiated countermeasures, their systems responded with protocols they never wrote. Access levels shifted, user logs vanished, then reappeared scrubbed. The intrusions stopped on their own. The attackers had already left, after watching them react. They still hadn't understood. They thought it was sabotage. Randomized cyber warfare. Rogue interference. But Earth wasn't lashing out. Earth was finishing a process already underway. Everything until now had been calibration. At 0600, a single unarmed human vessel appeared in Council-locked space. No escort. No shield array. No known registry. The Council prepared to intercept. Then the ship transmitted. Not a message. Not a negotiation. A single stream of data, archived footage, historical logs, intercepted communications, all detailing every action the Council had taken against humanity, every broken protocol, every sanctioned abuse. Each file digitally verified by Council systems themselves. Every frame indexed by time, location, and author. The evidence was irrefutable. The stream concluded with a biometric signature, one of the children killed in the first colony strike. Then the vessel disappeared. No engine flare. No warp field. It simply ceased to register. By 0630, 14 Council servers began rebooting, unprompted. Their operating systems had been rewritten without being touched. Entire cores replaced with functionally identical code, except now, that code spoke Earth's language first. No command override worked. The systems responded to something else, something not in the Council's control hierarchy. Fleet commanders issued readiness alerts. Supply lines were rerouted. High Councilors demanded answers. They received none. Every probe sent to Earth's space returned nothing but static. Long-range telescopes picked up false readings. Entire star charts had been subtly altered. They weren't looking at Earth. They were looking where Earth wanted them to. At 0700, a war council was called in emergency session. Half the members didn't arrive. The ones who did found a data packet waiting, real-time surveillance footage of their own worlds from above. Human drones, unarmed, hovering silently. Not cloaked. Not hidden. Observing. There was no message attached. None was needed. At 0730, the Council's largest shipyard complex, Arterian Delta, detected a cascade failure in its defensive perimeter. Then its construction AI went dormant. 32 ships under assembly dropped from their gravity rigs simultaneously. Not a single life lost. No damage to the facility. Just absolute paralysis. And on every internal monitor, a single phrase appeared. This is restraint. By 0800, panic overtook policy. The Council issued a system-wide code black. High threat containment level. Full defense posture. And still, not a single human fleet moved. Because they didn't have to. At 0830, an emergency summit was demanded with Earth. The request was received. Then ignored. Repeated. Then declined? Earth replied only once. A live feed appeared across all Council territories. A human stood alone, not a soldier, not a politician, but a historian. Behind them, no symbols, no military insignia, only the names of every human victim lost since first contact. They didn't give a speech. They gave a list. One by one, the names were read. Slowly. Deliberately. Each name matched to location, age, and event. The feed lasted 9 hours. When it ended, nothing followed. No demands. No declarations. Just silence. And in that silence, the Council realized the truth. Humanity had never been seeking war. We had been demanding acknowledgement. And when denied, we answered not with chaos, but with clarity. We didn't retaliate with fire. We restructured the definition of control. We didn't claim vengeance. We demonstrated consequence. No treaty was signed. No apology was issued. But from that day forward, no Council directive mentioned Earth without pause. Because we weren't part of their system. We had become its limit.